everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I'm Brian Nemhauser. It is a wonderful, what is it, Tuesday? Wednesday. It's Wednesday. The days are flying by. This is episode 359. Yes, we are 6 days away from 365 straight days of Hawk Blogger Mornings. So looking forward to celebrating that with you all next Tuesday. Still don't know exactly what I'm going to do. One thing I am going to try to do is introduce or include some messages from listeners. So we'll do some voicemails. If you want to send a voicemail in that I'll play, go ahead and record something on your phone. You can use your voice memo app and then just attach it to an email. Send it to me at brian@hawkblogger.com. And I won't play all of them probably, but I will pick some to play next week. So give it some thought, all sorts of possibilities of what you want to say on that voicemail. It can go any direction. And it'd be great to include all of you who have, kind of made this all possible. I'll tell stories about it next week, so I won't get all nostalgic quite yet, but looking forward to celebrating that with you. And when I started this last year, I did not yet have press credentials. I did not yet have the opportunity to go to the VMAC and ask questions at press conferences and listen to players and go into locker rooms and talk to coaches and GMs and all that kind of stuff. And I certainly had done some of those things before, but it's different when you're doing it with credentials and as, some sort of reporter. I don't exactly know what to call myself because I'm not exactly a reporter, but, whatever. So now that I've had a season of doing that, I've talked to pretty much every player on the Seahawks roster on and off camera. I've talked to coaches on and off camera. I've, talked to front office personnel, PR people, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that the press conference yesterday that introduced Cooper Kupp, new Seahawks wide receiver, was one of the most impressive that I have been there for over the past year. And, I've had the chance to get to know some of the Seahawks from the LOB era and know kind of what makes them tick and how smart they were and how competitive they were, how talented they are. And that was really impactful for me and just kind of shaping my perspective on who these people are that are playing this sport and giving us this entertainment and 365 straight days of content to talk about, right? But I want to play a few clips from the Cooper Kupp press conference yesterday. And one of the benefits of having credentials is I get to shoot this myself, so I can play you the video and it's not copyrighted. So that's all great too. But I think the Seahawks did more than just add a receiver. I think they added more than a veteran. I think they added more than a feel-good story with Cooper Kupp. And so that's what I'm going to talk about predominantly in this episode. And we'll obviously hit on some other things as well. Before we get into all that, a few house cleaning programming notes and a few bits on Seahawks news. So, just a reminder that for those that have already been patreon.com/hawkblogger subscribers for a while, for members, you've always got access to a Slack channel where we can talk and have fun there between shows. That is now switching to Discord. So if for whatever reason you haven't heard that, check over on patreon.com/hawkblogger. It is just a changing of where those offline chats or between show chats are happening, and all the instructions for how to get over there are on there. There's also a bonus for YouTube folks. So people that are YouTube club level members or suite level members on YouTube as members, you're getting a new benefit. You're getting access to this Discord channel. One of the reasons I'm moving to Discord is because it allows me to bring my YouTube community and my Patreon community into one place to have the conversation. Now, I've had a few comments come up on this since I've talked about this as if there is a new paywall, and I just want to be really clear. These shows are free. They're going to continue to be free. My audio podcasts are free. And in fact, I'm going to start posting HB Mornings as part of the audio podcast for everybody. Up until recent, like for the past year, HB Mornings has only been available to Patreon subscribers in audio form. Well, now it's going to be available for everybody for free. That will have ads in it, to be very clear. Patreon members will always get the audio version without ads. So that's one of the things you're getting is you're paying for no ads. So I am not putting more content behind paywalls. I am not doing anything other than providing more benefits to people that are supporting the show. So please understand, this is not me clawing more things behind a paywall. I'm trying to make everything available to as many people as possible. And I think that's going to increase even more this coming year. So that's that. Seahawks news. So we got official news yesterday that Tevin Jenkins officially visited the Seahawks. So that's happened. Does not mean anything other than it happened. And as we talked about this yesterday, they've already had Lucas Patrick in, the guard, sometimes a center, who played for John Benton and Clint Kubiak in New Orleans last year. He came in. Then Tevin Jenkins came in. And now Dylan Redunz, 26-year-old player for the Titans, is coming in for a visit. I think that's probably today. So Dylan Redunz has some experience with Jeffrey Outen, who is a coach that the Seahawks hired on the running game side. And if you're kind of curious about who Dylan Redunz is, that's probably because he has not been a particularly impactful player since entering the league. Like Tevin Jenkins, he was drafted in the second round, 53rd overall by the Titans. And he actually came in to play tackle. So he has played primarily tackle in his career with the Titans. He has played left guard. He has played right guard. And as of last year, in 2024, he played exclusively right guard. That does not mean that's the only position he plays, but that's the only position he played last year. His PFF grades in general, not super impressive. At least last year, 57 overall, 64 pass block, 53 run block. In 2023, he did have a 67 overall grade, which is not bad. He had a 78.7 run blocking grade. So that's good. I will take a look real quick because I've done this before on other players, and I'm kind of just curious myself. When we look at zone run blocking grades, how did he do last year? I will tell you momentarily. But, interestingly, in 2022, so 2023, he had the 78.7 run blocking grade. In 2022, he had a 78.1 pass blocking grade and a very low run blocking grade. So he just hasn't kind of put it all together yet. Obviously, Outen knows him, but don't know. Yeah. I just got his run blocking grade. Let me get his zone run blocking grade. Where did he show up? He showed up 85th overall with a 60.3 zone run blocking grade in 2024. Let's check out 2023, where he played a decent amount of tackle. Long story short, this is not a guy that screams the answer, but he is a veteran, and the coaching staff does have some experience with him, and he was a former second-round pick. So he clearly has some talent and some skills, but he is going to be someone who would be in the mix to, compete. But again, I don't think would be a guy you'd expect to just Oh, interesting. So in 2023, he was the 25th best zone blocking tackle in the NFL. Well, if I actually let me remove guards. He was actually the where'd he go? He was the 13th best zone blocking tackle in the NFL, according to PFF, in 2023. He was right up there with like Zach Tom and Lane Johnson and Brian O'Neill. That's interesting. So Dylan Redunds, another name to keep an eye on. Not anyone to necessarily believe is the answer, but they're gonna bring in a few of these guys. They're gonna make a decision. They'll sign at least one of them. The other news of note: Garrett Bradbury, the center for the Vikings, who a lot of people had connected to the Seahawks as a possible answer after they signed Ryan Kelly. Would that mean that Bradbury would come and be the center for Sam Darnold again, and he has connections to the coaching staff? Well, that's not going to happen. He signed with the New England Patriots for about $12 million. I don't know if it's per year or what. Doesn't really matter because he's not coming to the Seahawks is really the point. And I'm not worried about that. I don't think Garrett Bradbury, like he has issues with strong defensive tackles, and I'm not worried about that. I know that the Seahawks coaching staff has looked at Olu Oluwatimi and Jalen Sundell, and they feel pretty good about the center spot. Does not mean that they won't draft somebody, but I don't think that Garrett Bradbury is like this big loss. So that's kind of the update on what's going on with the Seahawks. But let's get to the main event. Let's talk about the new player that the Seahawks brought in and a few of the things that he said that kind of got my attention. And the first one was just his connection to the franchise. And I mean, honestly, he won me over. He won me over right away with this conversation about players that have influenced his game.
Just talking down the hall, Doug Baldwin, one of the best come to balance releases in history. And little pieces of game. It's like little pieces of game like that. It's like, man, that's something that I do. It's watching Doug Baldwin do that stuff to guys, turn people around all the time. So that's part of what it's in my bag. It's something that I carry with me, and so it is. There's guys that have come through this organization that have been impactful in ways they might not know about how I play the game.
I love that from Cooper Kupp, and I mean, I'm a Doug Baldwin stan, so anyone that's a Doug Baldwin fan is automatically gets some respect from me. I mean, he talked about games that he came and watched as a kid, getting the day off from school. He was at the Sean Alexander 200-yard snow game in 2006 and standing up at the top of the stadium, freezing his butt off, but then getting the day off from school and walking through the hall, which, by the way, now within the VMAC, they've got a hall with every single game. I think it's every single game. I'm not sure if it's every single win or every single game, but they've got a kind of a 12 by 12 picture, like glossy picture on like metal or glass mounted with one picture from every one of those games. And you just walk down that hall and he was like, I looked at that and I saw where I knew where I was for some of those moments. And so I think having that connection to the franchise matters. Consider how often we've talked about whether or not people want to be here and whether they want to come to Seattle versus the Southeast or, the Southwest or a number of, the East Coast. And there's just not that doubt here. He's lived here. He obviously grew up here, and he knows it. It's in his blood. And so this next one was one of the things he said, that when he was at a game with his dad, and this must have been 2011 when the Ray Lewis's last game in Seattle. It wasn't his last game overall, but this was a game Marshawn Lynch kind of gave Ray Lewis the dead leg. This is when this was like the game after Marshawn Lynch and Tom Cable had had a meeting of the minds, and he started running the zone runs the way Cable has been begging him to. And this is just a glimpse of Cooper Kupp's, personality, as well as he talked about seeing Ray Lewis.
Able to be right next to the tunnel as Ray Lewis ran out, and my dad tapped me. He's like, "Hey, you think you can play in the NFL?" And I looked at Ray Lewis and I was like, "Oh yeah, I can play. I got this."
So I got to paint the picture a little bit of what was going on in the press conference, because the typical press conference is in the main, I don't even know what it's called, but the player meeting room or something. So it's like a theater style thing. There's theater seating with, all the way back to the wall. And there's kind of this middle section where it breaks off. And there's enough space, like an aisle there, where that's where all the cameras set up. That's where I set up. That's where all the actual real people with cameras set up. And then there's the front section. And the reporters, they kind of are dotting a few seats. No, not many of them sit next to each other. Everyone just kind of sits wherever. There's usually, I don't know, 10 or 15 people in the whole room, maybe a little bit more. For this, when Cooper came in, one, he had his family with him, which was cool. Two, a bunch of the Seahawks coaches and front office people were there, and they didn't like sit in the seats. They all lined the back wall. So Jake Peetz was there, who he made a joke about and pointed out at one point. John Schneider was there. I didn't go and check every single coach that was there, every face, because I was trying to pay attention to what was going on. But you could tell that this was meaningful for them too. They were excited about adding him. Jake Peetz was like cracking up when Cooper was making fun of him. But I think this signing mattered to them, and not just to you as a fan or just to the players on the team. And I think I'm going to play some sound, and I think you're going to hear more about why. The next couple bits I wanted to play for you are like about his mindset and what kind of makes him somebody that could really do what he's done, which is go from being a 155-pound, little kid to a legit NFL star. And this was a question I asked him about, a lot of people, you've kind of beaten doubters your whole life, and now people are saying you're too old or you're too beat up. Is that something that drives you? And this answer was just outstanding.
I've had people doubt me for a long time through my life, and in some ways, rightfully so. I mean, I was a very small kid growing up and cared a lot, but there's a lot of people that care a lot and just don't have the stuff stringed together. And I was very, blessed to have a lot of coaches to come alongside me and teach me and show me the way, and very thankful for that. And I wouldn't be here today without that. But with all those doubts and all those things, it's never been about proving other people wrong. I think I've lived in that space, and it never goes well. It's been about being who I am, like believing in myself and knowing that I can be who I see myself becoming. And when I've taken that attitude, when I've taken that mindset, that's when I've always been at my best. And I'll continue that. I know how to navigate these waters. I've been here before, and it's not about the negative energy of trying to prove anyone else wrong, trying to make anyone else feel bad about anything. It's just about being myself and being who I believe I can be, and going out there and playing the game I love.
Wise words, man. Those are wise words. They're not easy to come by either, to not just say them, but live them and mean them. You could see as he was talking about this wasn't just, coach speak. This wasn't just, PR stuff. These are lessons he's learned. And, I love proving people wrong. And I would bet, in a private moment, he'd admit that he enjoys that quite a bit as well. In one of the radio interviews he did, he was asked about, how, like, was it a coincidence that he had some of his best games in college against Pac-12 teams, or at that time Pac-10 teams, that passed him over? And he kind of was like, no, no, of course that's just a coincidence, you know. So of course he's a competitor, but one of the things that just really smacked me in the face listening to him, watching him yesterday, was he's not trying to figure out who he is. He knows exactly who he is, and he's had a pretty good perspective on who he is and how he's going to be for a very long time. And there's some more clips I'm going to play in a second that just speak to, like, the self drive that he's got, that the internal focus that has just served him really, really well, obviously, to get to the point he's gotten. And I think about that kind of mindset. And honestly, one of the guys in the Seahawks locker room that he reminds me of in that regard is Ernest Jones, interestingly, coming from the Rams as well. And he talked about how Ernest talked to him about his great experience coming to Seattle, and that's already having a reflection. Well, first time I talked to Ernest Jones, I mean, I guess was at a press conference, but then I talked to him at his locker, and the guy's just completely comfortable in his own skin. He's not trying to put on airs. He's not trying to be something. He's very comfortable with who he is and very confident in who he is. And I think Cooper Kupp has a similar aura about him. And this was him being asked about Jay Dumas, who was a high school coach for him. And, you know, there's a great clip of kind of his mindset back then.
That conversation, because I told him what I want. I said I want to be a running back at USC. That's what I said. I told him, I said I want to play running back at USC. Reggie Bush was my guy, and he said you gotta change your plans. You know, he's like best case scenario, like, you know, maybe you can go to Central Washington, you know, like play at the D2 school there if you like work really hard, like maybe you can do that. And I was like, you know what, no. I think I'm going to do what I want to do, you know? And there was like this mindset. And in some ways, it goes back to kind of that doubting piece. It's like, okay, well, that's what he thinks, but like, I know what I want to do. I know what I want to achieve and what I want to become and who I am. And while I didn't get to go to USC and be a running back, I do think the habits that I formed in high school have carried me through every step of my career. Understanding that it is the work, it's the time that you put in, it's your preparation that sets you up to go play this game freely. And, you know, those habits were established early on. It's all I know now. So
that's the mindset you're getting in the locker room. That's the mindset that, I'm not saying it wasn't there to begin with, that you don't have that, but I think this next few clips I'm going to play are going to speak to the culture, the identity that Mike Macdonald's building. And I think John Schneider's building, because John Schneider hired Mike Macdonald and they're doing this together. And the more guys you bring in with the mindset that Cooper Kupp has, I just think the better off you are. And the more likely you are going to outperform expectations than underperform expectations. And frankly, I think the Seahawks have underperformed expectations, you know, at times over the last few years. And, you know, Cooper Kupp talked about kind of his first impressions of Mike Macdonald and John Schneider when he was asked about, you know, look, you were recruited by Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb were on the phone with you trying to convince you to go to Dallas. Like, why did you pick here? And I'm going to play you some clips answer that question.
I thought the messaging from Mike and from John and from the, you know, Coobs, from all the guys that I talked to here, the messaging was right on par with what I thought was how you build a championship team. It's about the people. You focus on bringing in good people that are about ball, and all the other stuff's going to fall in place.
So that's Cooper talking about the messaging, and we've heard exactly that from Mike Macdonald very consistently. But that wasn't the only thing he said about kind of the organizational philosophy here and what attracted him to it. Um, this next clip is him just talking about what it means to be a Seahawk.
There's a belief. There's organizations in this league that believe they're going to lose, and there's organizations that believe they're going to win. And here in Seattle, you've always seen that belief that they're going to find a way to win the game.
You know, that's on one hand you can say that that's just a platitude that he's handing to Seahawks fans and the organization, but if you look at the Seahawks record over the last quarter century, they're one of the winningest franchises over that period of time. And there is generally this belief. They're, knock on wood, Seahawks have not had like the 3-win season since the 90s. They haven't had these, they had a few down years, but the biggest criticism you could say about the Seahawks is that they have too many mediocre seasons where they win 7, 8, 9 games. And there's a lot of franchises that those are their high points. So I do think there's truth in what he's saying there. And I do believe that the expectation here is the Seahawks are going to win. And if you compare it to like the Mariners organization, there's a belief that they're going to lose. Ultimately you're hopeful as a fan that the talent will finally turn the corner or whatever. But the general expectation is, yeah, they're probably going to lose. Like that's just what permeates that organization, and it goes all the way to the top. And I don't know that Seahawks fans really appreciate how much the Seahawks are the opposite of that. And yes, they don't have as many championships as everybody would like, but it is a winning organization. And I think that it attracts other people that are winners. This other piece I want to play that I think kind of fits in with the mindset that Mike Macdonald's trying to build here and what Cooper Kupp brings in. I asked him, I was like, hey, you know what? A lot of receivers don't take a lot of pride in blocking. Why is it something that you've, become great at? Why is it something that you take pride in? And he gave a great answer here.
Yeah, so early on, I got credit Jay Dumas, my high school coach. Shout out to Jay for making that a point of emphasis for me. And I didn't learn until later that he was the worst blocking receiver at WSU in history of WSU receivers. But he seemed to make it seem like it was really important that you blocked as a wide receiver. So when I was in high school, that was always a big emphasis, and carried on as we kind of went through college, and then. For the Rams, that has always been like with being condensed formations. You're a part of the blocking surface. You're a part of the counts, and that was so much fun because I got to learn as if I was an extension of the offensive line. The verbiage, the thought process behind how they're doing things, the angles that are being done, the counts with the linebackers, with the shades, with the where the bubble is at, and all this different stuff. It's like, man, I love football, and this is a whole other part where I thought I had things figured out, and you realize there's a whole other world happening. Right at the last scrimmage, and it's been something that's been fun for me to learn and be a part of. And as that's grown, I've just fallen in love with it. Fallen in love with being a part of helping the run game become a thing, come to life, and seeing how that plays off into the pass game and all the things you can do there. And it's been a fun thing for me.
I have to imagine Mike Macdonald was had those little heart emoji eyes, as he was listening to that. Probably, I don't know that Clint Kubiak has heart emoji eyes in his personality, but just think about that. I mean, that was a minute and a half, roughly, of him talking about his love of run blocking as a receiver. That's not common. That just isn't common. I'm telling you, that's not. Now, the Super Bowl, one of the things that a lot of folks do not remember about the Super Bowl team, the Super Bowl winning team, the 2013 LOB era team. Those guys were bought into run blocking. Doug Baldwin was a nasty run blocker. Golden Tate was a nasty run blocker. Those guys brought it. And if you think about the 49ers, who very similar offense, right? And when they were at their best from a running perspective, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, two of the best, and then Jawan Jennings, three of the best blocking receivers in the NFL. When you have receivers that block that way, that tenaciously, not to mention a tight end in George Kittle, who's an excellent blocker, that is what turns 5-yard runs into 60-yard runs. The blocking on the outside, the commitment down the field. And that's how you get to the edge. And when you have a guy like Kenneth Walker, who is lightning on the edge of a running game, and in this outside zone that they're going to be looking for him to find a crease and hit it up in there, having receivers that can do that, and not only can, but love to do that, is massive. It's massive. And so a lot of people are going to be talking about, well, does he still have it as a receiver? Is he too injured? Is like, you don't have to be full health to block. And there's clips of Cooper Kupp, which I can't play because they're going to be copyright strikes if I do, but of him, like, not just blocking outside, but leading up into the middle between, offensive linemen. He's a super physical guy, and you can see in his face just how much he loves that aspect. And the fact that he talked about that there's this whole part of the game that he got to learn about. That is an example of someone who just loves football. And that's what Mike Macdonald wants. He wants guys that not just love the game, but are selfless and really contributing to winning. And one of the other things that was really cool, I think this was on the 710 Seattle Sports interview he did after the press conference. He talked about that, you've got it right. On the best teams he's played on is when the wide receiver room plays for each other. And that's very rare in the NFL because a lot of the different rooms might be able to get there. Offensive linemen can get there. Secondary members can get there, probably defensive linemen, all that kind of stuff. And there are different things that factor into it. But wide receivers, if one person is getting the ball, the other person isn't. And those guys are paid based off of receptions and touchdowns, and tends to attract a little bit of the personality type that wants to be the centerpiece of everything going on. And Cooper Kupp talked about the fact that being a wide receiver and that's playing for each other, that understands that if I'm drawing this coverage, that's helping someone else succeed. That's a huge, huge win. And it reminded me of the conversation we had with Marquez Valdez-Scantling as well, about how the receivers coach in New Orleans changed his mindset about how to play the position, in that he had been part of offenses where he was told, like, okay, you're not going to get the ball in this play. You just run here to get people out. And this receiver coach in New Orleans was like, no, you run every route to win it, regardless of whether you're going to get the ball. And that was a just huge mindset change. Sounds obvious, but it was a different coaching point than he's had in the past. And he had maybe his best 8-game stretch as a pro with the Saints. So you've got him in there already understanding this concept. You've got Cooper Kupp, who's lived it and leads it. And you've got now JSN, and I think Jake Bobo already is in this mindset as well, and also happens to be a great blocker. I mean, dare to dream for a second that the Seahawks have not assembled the most explosive receiver room, but they might have assembled the best possible group of guys to run this offense, to be exactly where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be there, to run full speed on every rep, to block and take some joy in unlocking the run game, and how that's also going to help the pass game. They might have just like lucked into, because Kupp being available was luck. They might have lucked into a really great fit for this offense. And it reminds me of, I think back at like the Bobby Ingrams and the Daryl Jacksons and the Joe Jaravishes and, even the DJ Hackett's, like unsung guys in general, but guys that played the right way. And I think the Seahawks have a decent chance of having added another guy that plays the right way. One more clip I want to play that was just fun, and it was kind of hilarious to watch this unfold in real time. So you'll hear Bob Condotta ask about the Pearl Jam shirt that Mr. Kupp is wearing, and here's how Cooper answered.
Story behind the Pearl Jam t-shirt?
They're from Seattle.
Yeah, no,
No.
So pretty good deadpan there from Cooper Kupp. And the funny part there is, if you don't know, with Bob Condotta, the guy is an encyclopedia of knowledge about everything, but he's also a huge audiophile. Like, he loves music, I think. So it was the notion that Bob was like in that moment having to reestablish the fact that he knows that Pearl Jam is a Seattle band was actually pretty endlessly funny to me. I got a pretty good kick out of that. So yeah, like, there's more from that press conference I'll play in other shows. Specifically, I'd asked Cooper Kupp about this notion of slot receivers. I'm going to probably spend a little bit of time on that as a separate topic another time. But completely comfortable with himself, happy to be here, believes in the things that his coach and his general manager believe in, not because they believe in it, because they share the same view on how to win football games and how football teams should be built. And he's been at the highest level. I think that this situation, he talked about how hard it was to go through, that it's been really difficult, that he kind of expected to play his whole career for the Rams. And he also talked, I asked him if he was playing, I said, Bobby Wagner went closer to home when he left the Seahawks, played for the Rams, but looked forward to playing the Seahawks twice a year. You've come home. Are you looking forward to playing the Rams twice a year? And he's like, yeah, I am, but that's not why. Like, that wasn't a reason. So you've got a guy that's just self-motivated. If you hear his radio interviews as well, he was kind of asked us in a couple different ways about his health and about whether he thought about retiring. And he's like, not even a little bit. Like, I watch all my film and my practice, like on practice reps and in game reps, and I can still set up cornerbacks. I can still do everything I want to do. And if I couldn't, I wouldn't be here. So, it's all fun at this point, which is great. That's why March and the off season are fun times, because you can just dare to dream that Cooper Kupp's going to be the best version of himself. And that doesn't mean 1,900 yards like he had, or 16 touchdowns like he had, or winning, offensive player of the year. It's not that. Even what he was last year when he was healthy was on par for a 1,000-yard season with, 70 catches. If he can be that, if he can be a good blocker, if he can be a great complement to what they've got in that receiver room, Seahawks got a huge, huge win in this signing. So I was very, very impressed and very, very encouraged about what this could mean. And I don't want, like, there's people that are going to put this as a juxtaposition to DK Metcalf. I don't think it has to be. There's a couple things that are, but if you ask Tyler Lockett, who was also a great pro and a great leader in his own right, he would tell you that DK Metcalf was a great teammate. And I've shown clips, I think, on this show when people are like, DK is just about himself. I'm like, no, it's not true. Like, I watch things that maybe some people don't, but for years, I would watch DK Metcalf's reaction on the side of the screen when a pass went to Tyler Lockett for a touchdown, or another player, another receiver for a touchdown, and he would be jacked. Like, he would be pumping his fist. Like, the most demonstrably excited I ever saw DK Metcalf is when one of his guys in the receiver room caught a touchdown and it wasn't him. So he was not just about himself. That's not who DK Metcalf was. At the same time, I think it was pretty palpable that he didn't want to be here. Like, this was not the place that he wanted to be for whatever reason, don't know. And I don't know that he was the best example of a leader in that regard, how he showed up in some of these practice moments, some of the stuff that happened in games. I don't think that it was like this terrible thing that people make it out to be, but I don't know that it was ideal. And so I think the potential now is you've got a lot of the good things about DK Metcalf's personality in terms of being a competitor, being about his other guys in the locker room and in the receiver room, willing blocker, and maybe not some of the other stuff that wasn't as appealing. So I loved that. I loved that from Cooper Kupp. I think it was great to see him kind of get introduced. It was great to see his wife kind of shake her head when he was talking about playing guitar and not being able to sing. And it was also, I think, big impression for me was just seeing the smiles on the faces of guys like John Schneider and Jake Peetz and the coaches and staff in the back, being really happy that this happened. So those are my thoughts on the Jake Peetz edition. Or not the Jake Peetz edition. That would be funny. On the Cooper Kupp edition. And there's an interesting bit that's come out just now, at least I'm looking at it, from Albert Breer on his Tuesday notes. And Michael Sean Dugar just posted this from that article. And it says, this is about DK Metcalf and asked for a trade in part because the timeline for the extension. So I'm going to read this to you guys. It says, one leftover from my Seahawks reporting, this is Albert Breer's reporting over the weekend. One reason for DK Metcalf's departure was that he wanted to be paid now. And not now as in this offseason, now as in right now in March. The Seahawks typically do extensions with guys under contract in the summer. Maybe if Metcalf was still around at that point, Seattle would have given him one. But the fact that he didn't want to wait and see, which is understandable given that even a promise to negotiate wouldn't guarantee anything, helped to drive the trade request. With all that established, I think this was probably a case that accelerating the inevitable conclusion, given that Metcalf and team had already endured some bumps, parentheses, things weren't always perfect between he and Geno Smith, and that Jackson Smith and Jigba is among the young players poised to get new deals over the next year or so in Seattle. So that's an interesting note because I talked to you all on this show about the timing of the different extensions, and that the last extension that DK Metcalf signed was with the Seahawks was in June. And so I had expected maybe that Geno Smith would be extended ahead of free agency because they needed the cap space, but that DK Metcalf would be in June. Interesting that he wanted it now. And why? Like, why would he want it now? In some senses, it doesn't make a lot of fiscal sense to make that request because Jamar Chase hadn't been extended. T. Higgins hadn't been extended. All that's going to happen is your price is going to go up the longer you wait. That's been proven at pretty much every position, especially receiver. So why now? I don't know. Like, maybe it was a matter of if they weren't going to hit a number he wanted, that he wanted to start figuring out his new home earlier. I don't know. There could be other reasons, but timing is an odd reason for when the extension was going to happen. The other piece in there, further evidence that he and Geno Smith were not on the best terms. I don't think they were arch enemies or anything, but look, if you watched even last year, at least 2, maybe 3 of Geno Smith's interceptions are due to DK Metcalf running a route the wrong way. He admitted as much, to his credit, but you could see the frustration with Geno Smith about that, and who knows what else factored into that. So it would have been really amusing if the Seahawks actually had been able to trade both of them to the Raiders, as was the initial report. And I don't know if you saw this report, but that Pete Carroll initially had been supportive of the idea of DK Metcalf and Geno Smith for Max Crosby, but John Spytek, the GM, was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So yeah, I think it's probably best for all involved that they're in different teams now, and that maybe for the best that they're not on the Seahawks. I mean, I think you have clay that can be molded now in that locker room, and not a lot of baggage from what had happened in the past. Are they going to be better? Don't know. That is to be determined. All right, let me get to super chats here. There's a few of them. Sheed says, we have focused on quarterback, wide receivers, and offensive line this offseason. Well, have we focused on offensive line? Will we have a day where we talk about how Clint Kubiak can improve K9, Charbonnet, and the run game? I see you're talking about what I'm talking about. Yes, I've definitely talked about offensive line. Yeah. I mean, I think that I've mentioned offhand a number of times that I think while people are wondering what's going to happen without DK Metcalf, on the offense, and does that take away their biggest weapon? I've talked about the fact I think Kenneth Walker is going to be their biggest weapon. I don't think it's going to be about replacing a receiver weapon with a receiver weapon. I think it's going to be a lot of potentially big moments from Kenneth Walker. And so I'll think about ways to highlight that in a show. I'll figure out some guests maybe I can bring on for that, but it's a good question. I'll see what I can do there. Cameron Cronkite, Kupp is dreamy. The vibes are chef's kiss. Yeah, agree with you there, Cameron. Thomas Ish says, draft talk. I know we all like Nick Emenwari and taking him at 18, but why would we get him when we have Kobe and J-Love and decent depth behind him? Good question. And let me make sure to talk about 30 visits as well, because there's a few of them that are starting to trickle out. So Nick Emenwari, the safety, if people don't know, who was coached by Cam Chancellor's former coach, and whose Cam Chancellor's former coach compared Nick Emenwari to Cam Chancellor. There's also comparisons of Nick Emenwari to Kyle Hamilton. So the first reason you would talk about getting him at 18 is if you can get Cam Chancellor or Kyle Hamilton or someone similar at 18, that's a fantastic pick 100 out of 100 times. Doesn't matter if you have Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor at safety. Like, if you can get guys that are Hall of Fame caliber players at 18, you pick them. And I'm not saying that Nick Emenwari is a Hall of Fame caliber player, but he is one of one in terms of athletes at the safety position. He's literally ranked number 1 in athletic testing ever at the position. And he's not like Obafuanu. I can't remember what his name is, but the guy that did, I think, drafted by the Raiders, who had all these amazing combine numbers that actually were similar to Emenwari's. Emenwari was a first-team All-American. He is an excellent football player. So he has the athleticism and the production to demonstrate that he's probably a really high-ceiling player. Now, the other thing is the Seahawks play 3 safeties quite a bit. Rayshon Jenkins was let go, and that's a role that they played a lot of 3 safety looks. take one of the linebackers off the field. And Evan Worry is the perfect replacement for Jenkins in that he is a better box safety than he is a deep safety, although he played corner coming up. So he's got a lot of tools in the toolbox. And for a guy like Mike Macdonald, who has absolutely skyrocketed the careers of some really good middle of the field defenders, whether it's Roquan Smith at inside linebacker, whether it's Kyle Hamilton at safety, whether it's Julian Love, who had his best year under Mike Macdonald, whether it's Ernest Jones, like he's done a lot with those guys. And so I think that combination is interesting. I'm going to take a second to expand on this because I keep getting this question as well. Like, why would the Seahawks draft a tight end? Why are people talking about tight end? They've got Noah Fant and they've got AJ Barner. One, you need at least 3 tight ends, and Brady Russell's there as well. Not sure what his position or how he's going to be used is. Noah Fant's also in the last year of his deal. So the Seahawks, I don't think just need 1 tight end. I would be fine if they drafted 2 tight ends in this draft. I think it's a good tight end class, and you should take where there's talent. So, yeah, that's related question. Appreciate it. Italian Knight, another 50 free Hawk Blogger memberships. Thank you so much, Italian Knight. And folks, if you get one of these free memberships, good news. All you got to do is upgrade it to club level, and you can get access to the Discord channel. So little bit extra from being a free Hawks Nest member. Get access to the Discord channel, and all of you can join us in there and have a good time doing it. All right, Gingerbread Man. He says, I wonder if DK was already broke. He needed money this month. I don't think that's the case. That guy's got enough deals outside of football to last him a lifetime. William Awesome Co., who's been a member for 7 months. Appreciate that. William says, is Emin Worry what we hoped Jamal Adams would be? I don't know. I think Jamal Adams was a different kind of safety. I think that Emin Worry, being like cornerback background, one of the things that really stands out for me about Emin Worry is he is an excellent zone defender. He has great zone instincts. If you watch a lot of his highlights, especially his interceptions, a lot of them are him backtracking and pulling a ball away in zone coverage. And one of the other guys I've seen do that in this class, and I'm not just saying this because it's a high name, but it's Travis Hunter. Like, he has some of those instincts, and zone is different than, like, man cover guys are rare. Reek Woolen is an excellent man cover guy. He struggled a little bit in zone. And I think Devin Witherspoon's a great example of an excellent zone instinct player who also happens to be a good man cover corner. Emin Worry is a guy that I think just has really good instincts on his zone drops. And so I don't know that that's a Jamal Adams kind of player. Jamal Adams, primarily a box guy. I think his best thing was run defense and then a little bit as a blitzer. I think Emin Worry's a little bit of a different player than that. All right, Dr. Cluck 68 says, so just got done listening to Cooper Kupp. I'm just so happy to know that we both went to the same first Hawks game on a snowy prime time. Environment was fantastic and made me love football. Happy to see it do it for him too. Yeah, it was very cool. Very cool to hear him tell those stories. All right. Real Hawk Talk. So this is a double pod Wednesday. I saw somebody, I think, ask about this. There will be Real Hawk Talk tonight around 6 o'clock, so I'll get that set up here in just a bit. We will have Jeff Simmons. We'll have Derek Gebby. And by the way, Patreon members, if you want to ask your questions for tonight, there is a channel that just Patreon members can access where you can put your questions in there and we will answer them tonight. So head on over and do that. Okay, folks, I think that's it for today. I appreciate everybody tuning in for episode 359. Marching here towards episode 365. Again, remember, if you want to send a voicemail to me to maybe play on episode 365, record a voice memo on your phone, attach it to an email, send it to me at brian@hawkblogger.com. I will pick a few of those to play live on the show, and we'll have some fun with that next week. All right. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. I will see you back tonight for Real Hawk Talk. Until then, I'm Brian Nemhauser. This has been another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings.